Welcome, brave souls, to a channel like no other. If you've ever wondered what unfolds in the dark underbelly of emergency services, you've come to the right place. Tonight, we're diving deep into the spine-tingling world of 911 operators. In the heart of the night, when the world sleeps, these unsung heroes answer the calls of those in distress. But what happens when the voice on the other end isn't quite what it seems? When the ordinary turns chillingly extraordinary? Prepare yourself for a journey into the unknown, as we unravel real-life horror stories that have unfolded on the other side of the emergency line. These tales will leave you questioning the very fabric of reality. From ghostly encounters to chilling mysteries that remain unsolved to this day, our channel is your gateway to the most bone-chilling 911 operator stories out there. But be warned, once you start listening, there's no turning back. So, if you have the courage to venture into the depths of fear and the unexplained, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and join us as we journey through the haunting world of 911 operators. Your nightmares are just a click away. Whispers in the night, the vanishing in the woods. The night was dark and stormy, with the rain falling in heavy sheets, as Sarah, a 911 operator, sat in her dimly lit room at the emergency call center. Her headset rested on her shoulders, and she leaned forward, peering at the array of glowing screens before her. The sound of rain pattering against the windows provided a constant backdrop to her otherwise quiet night shift. Sarah had been working as a 911 operator for several years, and she had heard her fair share of emergencies. But nothing could have prepared her for the call that was about to come in. As she sipped her lukewarm coffee, a shrill ringing pierced the air, and the screen before her lit up with the flashing red icon indicating an incoming emergency call. She quickly grabbed her headset and answered, her voice steady and professional. 911, what's your emergency? Static crackled on the other end of the line, making it difficult to discern any coherent sounds. Sarah frowned, her heart racing. Hello? Can you hear me? Please. If you need help, I need to know your location. After a few more moments of static, a frantic voice finally broke through. Help! I'm lost in the woods. I don't know where I am. Sarah's training kicked in as she typed furiously into her computer, tracing the call's location to a remote area deep within a dense forest. Sir, stay calm. I'm here to help you. Can you describe your surroundings? Any landmarks or signs? The man on the other end of the line sounded terrified as he stammered. I don't see anything. It's so dark, and the trees all look the same. I don't know how I got here. Sarah could hear the fear in his voice and did her best to reassure him. All right, sir. We'll get you out of there. Can you tell me your name? My name is Mark, the man replied, his voice trembling. Okay, Mark. We have your location, and I'm dispatching a search and rescue team to your area right now. They should be there soon. Stay on the line with me, and I'll keep you updated. Sarah continued to talk to Mark, trying to keep him calm as they waited for the rescue team. The rain outside showed no signs of letting up, and the darkness of the forest seemed to close in around him. Minutes felt like hours as Mark clung to the only lifeline he had. The voice on the other end of the phone. He told Sarah about his hike earlier in the day, how he had ventured deeper into the woods than he'd ever been before. Panic had set in when he realized he was lost, and now he could hear strange noises in the distance, echoing through the trees. As Sarah tried to soothe Mark's fears, he suddenly went silent, his breath catching in his throat. I see something, he whispered, his voice filled with terror. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Mark, what do you see? Can you describe it? Mark hesitated before his voice trembled with dread. They have knives. I can see the glint of their blades in the flashlight beams. A cold shiver ran down Sarah's spine as she relayed the information to the rescue team, but it wasn't just the sight of the knives that had terrified Mark. It was the faces of the figures that had emerged from the darkness. He could now see them clearly, and their expressions were devoid of humanity. They're coming towards me, Mark exclaimed in a panicked whisper. I need help. Please, tell the cops to get here. Sarah's heart raced as she pleaded with the rescue team to expedite their response. She could hear Mark's footsteps pounding through the forest as he tried to escape his pursuers. "Mark, stay on the line with me," she urged. "We're doing everything we can to get you out of there." But the sinister figures closed in on Mark, their flashlights cutting through the darkness like malevolent eyes. He could see their faces twisted with malice as they drew nearer. Their intent was clear. They meant him harm. Mark's footsteps splashed through puddles as he continued to run, branches and thorns tearing at his clothing and skin. He knew he couldn't keep this up for long, and he needed to find a place to hide. His eyes scanned the dark forest for any sign of shelter, but everything around him seemed like a nightmare. The sinister whispers of his pursuers grew louder, and he risked a glance over his shoulder. The figures were gaining on him, their flashlights revealing the cruel smiles on their faces. He clamped a hand over his mouth to stifle a scream as he sprinted through the woods. "Mark, don't stop," Sarah cried out. "Keep running and we'll get you out of there." Mark's breaths came in ragged gasps as he pushed himself to the limit, the relentless pursuit behind him. He could hear their chilling laughter and the taunting calls of his tormentors. Then, in a desperate attempt to escape, Mark veered off the path and plunged into a thicket, hoping to lose his pursuers in the dense underbrush. The rain soaked him to the bone as he huddled, trying to muffle his breath and keep quiet. The sinister figures approached the thicket, their footsteps growing louder as they passed just a few feet away from Mark's hiding place. He held his breath, praying they wouldn't discover him. Rainwater dripped from the leaves above, masking the sound of his shallow breaths. Sarah's voice came through his earpiece, a lifeline in the darkness. "Mark, stay hidden. Don't make a sound. They'll pass by soon." Tears welled up in Mark's eyes as he listened to Sarah's comforting words. He clung to her voice, the only source of hope in this nightmarish situation. Minutes felt like hours as he waited for the figures to move on. Finally, the whispers began to fade, and the footsteps grew distant. Mark waited a little longer, his muscles tense and aching, before he dared to inch out of his hiding spot. He felt a surge of relief knowing that he had eluded his pursuers for now. "Mark, are they gone?" Sarah's voice quivered with concern. Mark nodded, even though Sarah couldn't see him. "Yes, I think so, but I can't stay here. I need to keep moving." Sarah agreed. "Stay quiet and head in the opposite direction. The rescue team is still on their way, but we'll get you out of there." With renewed determination, Mark cautiously left his hiding spot and continued his desperate journey through the treacherous forest. Every sound seemed amplified, every rustling leaf a potential threat. The rain showed no signs of letting up, and the darkness was unrelenting. As Mark moved deeper into the woods, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The sinister figures might still be out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. His steps were hesitant, his senses on high alert. Sarah remained on the line, her voice a constant source of reassurance. She guided Mark, providing directions and updates from the rescue team. It felt like a never-ending nightmare, but he clung to the hope that he would make it out alive. The hours dragged on, and Mark's exhaustion grew. He had lost track of time, and the forest seemed endless. But he couldn't stop. He knew that staying in one place for too long would be a death sentence. Then, in the distance, Mark heard the sound of sirens. The rescue team was getting closer. Relief washed over him, but he couldn't let his guard down just yet. He followed Sarah's instructions, guiding the rescue team to his location. Finally, the beams of flashlights pierced through the darkness, and the rescue team emerged from the trees. Mark collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face as they surrounded him, their presence a beacon of safety and hope. Sarah's voice crackled through his earpiece one last time, filled with relief and gratitude. "You're going to be okay, Mark. You're safe now." Mark nodded, unable to find the words to express his gratitude. He had escaped the clutches of those malevolent figures in the woods, thanks in no small part to the unwavering guidance of Sarah, the 911 operator who had become his lifeline in his darkest hour. But even as he was led to safety, Mark couldn't shake the haunting memory of that night, the sinister figures, and the chilling realization that evil could lurk in the most unexpected places. The horror of that night would stay with him forever, a reminder of the darkness that could descend when one least expected it, and the power of the human spirit to fight for survival. As Mark was brought to safety, Sarah's voice faded into the background. She had done her job, and her duty was fulfilled. But her relief was short-lived. A cold, emotionless voice came through the phone, startling her. "Your services are no longer needed." Sarah blinked in confusion, her heart pounding in her chest. "Who is this? What do you mean?" The voice on the other end spoke with an eerie calmness, devoid of any warmth or humanity. "We have our own plans for Mark now. You can disconnect." Terror surged through Sarah as she realized that the sinister figures in the woods were still out there, and they had somehow taken control of the call. She desperately tried to respond, to demand answers, but there was only silence on the other end. In that chilling moment, Sarah knew that the horrors of that night were far from over, and the darkness she had encountered on the other end of the line was something she couldn't escape. Days that followed, a massive search operation was launched to investigate Mark's disappearance. The local police, along with search and rescue teams, combed through the dense forest where Mark had last been heard on the phone with Sarah. The eerie silence of the woods was only broken by the relentless rain. The investigation turned up no trace of Mark, and his sudden disappearance remained a baffling mystery. The authorities questioned Sarah extensively, but she could only provide limited information about the sinister figures in the woods and the strange voice on the other end of the line. As the days turned into weeks, the search efforts waned, and Mark's case gradually faded from the public eye. His family clung to the hope that he might still be found, but with each passing day, their optimism dwindled. Then, one rainy evening, a chilling discovery was made. A hiker stumbled upon an abandoned campsite deep in the forest, not far from where Mark had last been heard. Torn clothing and personal belongings were scattered about, and a small fire pit had been hastily extinguished. But the most unsettling find was a message scrawled in blood on a nearby tree trunk. It read, "Your services are not needed." The authorities were immediately alerted, and a full-scale investigation was launched once more. DNA analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Mark, raising disturbing questions about his fate. As the investigation progressed, it became increasingly clear that Mark had not encountered the police that night in the woods. Whoever had picked him up had sinister intentions, and they were still at large. The search for Mark had taken a dark turn, as the authorities now faced the unsettling prospect of pursuing a group of individuals who had abducted him with malevolent intent. Sarah's involvement in the case also deepened as her testimony about the strange voice on the phone became a crucial piece of evidence. The investigators were determined to unravel the mystery and bring those responsible for Mark's disappearance to justice. Months passed, and the investigation led to dead ends and false leads. The sinister figures remained elusive, their motives shrouded in darkness. Sarah, haunted by the events of that fateful night, continued to cooperate with the authorities, determined to help in any way she could. The case of Mark's disappearance became a chilling tale of the unknown, a dark chapter in the annals of unsolved mysteries. The sinister figures in the woods had left a trail of fear and uncertainty, a stark reminder that evil could lurk in the most unexpected places. As the years went by, Mark's family held on to hope that one day he would return, but the passage of time only deepened the mystery and the sorrow that hung over their lives. The sinister figures remained at large, their intentions still a haunting enigma, and Mark's fate remained a tragic and unsolved puzzle in the depths of the dark and unforgiving woods. The Shadow's Vengeance. In the small town of Willowbrook, nestled deep within the woods, there was a lone 911 operator named Sarah. She was known for her calm demeanor and quick thinking, traits that made her the perfect fit for her demanding job. Willowbrook was a peaceful place, and most of Sarah's nights on the job were uneventful until one fateful evening. It was a stormy night, with the rain pounding against the windows of the small 911 dispatch center. Sarah sat at her desk, her fingers poised above the keyboard, ready to respond to any emergency that might come her way. The hours ticked by slowly, and the only sounds in the room were the hum of the fluorescent lights and the tapping of rain against the glass. As the clock approached midnight, a chilling sensation washed over Sarah. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Just as she was about to dismiss it as her imagination, the phone on her desk rang, startling her. She quickly answered, her voice steady. 911, what's your emergency? The voice on the other end was shaky and filled with fear. Please, you have to help me. There's someone in my house." Sarah's heart began to race as she typed in the address and dispatched the police to the location. "I need you to stay on the line with me. Can you tell me your name?" The caller hesitated for a moment before whispering, "My name is Emily." "Okay, Emily, help is on the way. Can you describe the person in your house?" Emily's voice quivered as she spoke. "I can't see them clearly, but they're tall, wearing dark clothes, and they're standing in the corner of my bedroom." Sarah's fingers danced across the keyboard as she relayed the information to the responding officers. She kept Emily on the line, trying to reassure her. But as the minutes passed, the sense of unease in the room grew stronger. The rain outside seemed to intensify, and the lights flickered momentarily. Suddenly, Emily's voice grew frantic. "Oh my God, they're coming closer! Please, hurry!" Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she listened to Emily's cries for help. The officers were still several minutes away, and there was nothing Sarah could do but keep her on the line. She tried to offer words of comfort, but her own fear was starting to take hold. Then, in a hushed, trembling voice, Emily said something that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. "They're whispering. I can hear them whispering my name." Sarah's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the situation. She had never encountered anything like this before. The room seemed to grow colder and the lights flickered again, this time staying off. She was plunged into darkness, with only the glow of the computer screens illuminating the room. "Emily, stay on the line with me," Sarah urged, her voice barely above a whisper. "Help is almost there." But Emily's response was a blood-curdling scream that sent a jolt of terror through Sarah's body. The scream was abruptly cut off, and all Sarah could hear was the sound of heavy breathing on the other end of the line. "Emily?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling. There was no response, only the eerie sound of that heavy breathing. Sarah knew she had to do something, so she called out to the officers over the radio, urgently requesting their status. But there was no reply, only static. Panic gripped Sarah as she realized that something was horribly wrong. She was alone in the dark, her only connection to the outside world severed. She fumbled for her flashlight and shone it around the room, revealing nothing out of the ordinary. But the sense of dread lingered, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was not alone. Just as she was about to make a desperate attempt to escape the room, the lights flickered back to life, and the computer screens lit up again. On the monitor, a chilling message appeared in a ghostly blood-red font. "You shouldn't have called for help, Sarah." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she stared at the screen, paralyzed with fear. The room felt suffocating, and she knew she had to get out. She reached for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. She was trapped. As the seconds ticked by, the room grew colder and colder. Sarah could hear faint, echoing whispers in the distance, growing louder with each passing moment. She couldn't make out the words, but the voices were filled with malice and malevolence. In the darkness, Sarah's terror reached its peak, and she knew that she was no longer alone in the room. The presence was all around her, and she could feel cold fingers brush against her skin. The whispers grew louder and more sinister, and she felt a suffocating pressure closing in on her. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it all stopped. The lights flickered back on, and the room was empty. Sarah was alone, shaken and terrified, but alive. She quickly called for backup, and the police arrived to find her in a state of shock. They searched the building, but there was no sign of Emily or any intruder. The 911 center was declared safe, but Sarah could never shake the memory of that night. She knew that she had encountered something beyond her understanding, something that should have remained hidden in the shadows. In the weeks that followed the disturbing incident at the 911 center, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Nightmares plagued her, and the memory of Emily's panicked call haunted her every moment. She had become more withdrawn, fearful of the dark, and even her colleagues noticed the change in her demeanor. One night, as Sarah sat alone at her desk in the dimly lit dispatch center, she felt a presence behind her. It was a feeling she had become all too familiar with, the sensation of being watched. Slowly, she turned in her chair, her heart pounding in her chest and her flashlight trembling in her trembling hand. In the corner of the room, where shadows seemed to congregate and coalesce, a formless, dark figure emerged. It was a shapeless silhouette that seemed to defy the laws of nature, a void within the darkness. Sarah's voice quivered as she managed to speak. "Who are you?" The figure remained silent for a moment, and Sarah could feel its malevolent gaze boring into her soul. Then, in a voice that sent icy tendrils of fear down her spine, it whispered, "I am the darkness that waits in the corners of your mind, Sarah. I am the fear that dwells in the depths of your nightmares." Terror seized Sarah as she realized that this was no ordinary shadow, no ordinary presence. It was something ancient and malevolent, a force beyond her comprehension. She tried to back away, but her chair caught on the edge of the desk, and she stumbled to the ground, her flashlight falling from her hand. The figure in the corner seemed to grow darker, more solid and more menacing. It began to inch closer, its shapeless form twisting and contorting as it moved. Sarah's heart raced as she desperately crawled backward, her fingers grasping for the fallen flashlight. But before she could reach it, the shadow lunged at her with a terrifying speed, engulfing her in its inky darkness. Sarah's scream was cut off as she felt an overwhelming, suffocating pressure. It was as though the very essence of the shadow was crushing her, snuffing out her life. In that moment of terror, Sarah's mind raced, and she remembered something, a fragment of an old legend she had heard as a child. It was said that darkness could be defeated by light, that shadows could be banished by the purest of flames. With her last ounce of strength, she reached for her flashlight and desperately clicked it on. A blinding beam of light pierced the darkness, and the shadow recoiled, writhing and screeching in agony. Sarah's vision returned, and she found herself gasping for breath on the floor. The shadow retreated, its form dissipating as it retreated back to the corners of the room. Sarah quickly scrambled to her feet, clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. She knew she had to get out of the dispatch center, away from whatever malevolent force had taken hold of the room. As she backed toward the door, the shadow hissed one final chilling warning. "This is not over, Sarah. I will always be here, waiting." With trembling hands, Sarah burst out of the room and into the corridor, where her colleagues rushed to her side. She tried to explain what had happened, but her words were met with disbelief. They searched the room, finding nothing out of the ordinary, and dismissed her story as a product of stress and exhaustion. But Sarah knew the truth. She had encountered something beyond the realm of the living, something that defied explanation. And she knew that despite the skepticism of her colleagues, the shadow's threat was very real. In the years that followed, Sarah left her job as a 911 operator, unable to shake the trauma of that night. She moved away from Willowbrook, seeking solace in the bustling city, far from the small town and the darkness that lurked within it. But she could never escape the memory of that shadow, the chilling whispers, and the malevolent force that had come so close to claiming her life. And in the darkest corners of her mind, she knew that the shadow's warning was true. It was not over, and it would always be waiting, lurking in the shadows, ready to strike again. Thanks for watching. To support us, please like and subscribe.